Jonaton Power is a huge talent, a squash champion known around the globe, except in Canada, where squash is a nickel-and-dime sport. And so, unlike most top athletes, for Jonaton, talent doesn't pay. But like most athletes, he needs sponsorships and business bucks behind him. Robin Benger followed Jonaton Power on the quest for the money before his run at the World Championship.
Jonaton Power is a squash player. He's the best squash player North America has ever produced. And he's practicing for the most critical tournament of his life, the World Championship.
If I was doing this for the money, I'd be in the wrong sport. I just want to be the best at it, and I do it for that, and if the money comes, then cool. If not, when it's all over, I'll get on to something else.
Power may shrug it off, but he stands to almost single-handedly invent squash as a business in North America. Personally, he could jump from $20,000 a year to almost $250,000 a year.
Players at the top of the game, such as Jonaton Power, could expect to make somewhere in the area of $100,000 in tournament purses, and in addition to that, receive another $100,000 to $150,000 in sponsorship deals.
Well, even sixes.
Until Jonaton Power, squash sponsorship in Canada has been almost non-existent.
No, I got to go over. Then we got to load the.
Trevor Marshall's been trying to change that. He's Jonaton Power's manager.
It's a very hard sell at this point because of the image that squash has as elitist, and there's very little media coverage and there's very little communication.
Jonaton will serve to Graham.
So far, Canadian business has been a big bust for Jonaton Power. Today, Jonaton and Canadian champion Graham Riding are playing an exhibition for the gentlemen members of the Toronto Rackets Club. It's a crowd that could probably afford to buy him a jet if they really wanted to. But for now, all he gets is oohs and ahs.
Now we got bloody Jonaton, a member of your club, works out of here.
In the workout room, Marshall is warming up some old contacts.
We had a lot of fun, didn't we? Yeah, we did.
Alan Cherry, who owns clothing stores, once happily sunk thousands of dollars into Marshall's squash tournaments.
When we come back in, we'll be coming back to you again to see if we can get you back into squash.
Marshall's been out of the squash business for 8 years. Running tournaments once wiped him out.
Everything, lost everything, and then just walked away. And finally my wife said, that's it, and just walked away. And never looked again until Jonaton.
Now he's been lured back by perhaps the hottest squash property in the world, in more ways than one.
You can't pretend to volley it and then go back.
Power's eruptions make tennis's John McEnroe sound like a Trappist monk, and it's hurt him with sponsors.
What about the down ball? I'm appealing the down ball.
Ball's down.
Somebody kill that guy.
The young Power tantrums are a legend in Canadian squash. Anybody who's followed squash has witnessed it at one time or another.
One-time manager Bruce Wright remembers how a tantrum cost Jonaton a racket deal.
Jonaton came off court and said some very untoward things about the product that he was using on court, and much to his dismay, the rep for that company was sitting in the crowd watching. So of course the next morning I received a phone call saying that they were no longer, nor would they ever be interested in an association with Jonaton Power.
Wright quit. So 3 years ago, Dad took over.
So you want to get into that hitting position as early as you can.
John Power, the squash pro at the Royal Canadian Yacht Club in Toronto, made a video to raise money for his son.
Hi, I'm Jonaton Power. You know, I love squash. It's a great game. I'm sure you understand that sport, like business, takes a whole lot of hard work to reach the top.
The result was pretty puny. John Power got only $6,000 from his mum and dad and some friends in exchange for a portion of Jonaton's winnings.
I'd come home with this big wad of cash and my dad would go, thank you very much, take that 50%, and I'd be left there, you know, that's my money. And I didn't understand that sort of business side of it, that it was actually an investment. It wasn't like sponsorship where they were actually giving me the money. It was, they were taking money, they were making money off my, my winnings.
$6 grand wasn't going to be enough to bankroll a world title. Power was a player at the crossroads, and Trevor Marshall, an old gambler, easily tempted. Maybe Trevor Marshall could shake some money down from the squash tree. At first, the grungy Jonaton set Trevor back.
He came in with a handicap hat on backwards and All his clothes are oversized and hanging, and it was not typical of what I'd expected of a squash player.
Trevor Marshall gave Power $15,000 in 2 years to make it.
I looked at him and I said, look, from a corporate perspective, one, you've got to get up into top 20 before you're worth anything. And at that point he was 47. I said, you've got to change your image. You've got to become a corporate value. I says, now if you can do all that and make top 20, we'll talk.
And Jonaton turned his career around, winning 5 major international tournaments and rocketing up to number 3 in the world.
So we want to especially welcome you to the McDonald's family. We've got the bandana here for you.
And finally, today, 18 months since Trevor Marshall took over, they have their first corporate deal at McDonald's.
It's not upside down. I did do it right.
Yeah.
One of the company lawyers, an avid squash player, had contacted Jonaton 2 weeks earlier.
There's a hat for you and a watch.
And for some memorabilia, some global burger coupons, and a fee of between $10,000 to $20,000, Jonaton will wear the bandana with a golden arch. This deal will be small potatoes compared to McDonald's other athletes, but their power play would look brilliant if Jonaton wins the Worlds in Malaysia the next week.
We're probably as excited as you are.
I don't know. I'm having a hard time sleeping these nights. World Championships next week.
Team from Canada.
Malaysia. This is the big show, the World Championship. For Power, it all comes down to 6 grueling games in 6 days against some of the fittest men on the planet. Of the best players, he's the only one without a major sponsor. So if he wins here, he's hit the jackpot. There's a real buzz of excitement around the fastest rising player in the game. Except with this guy. He represents Prince, one of the biggest squash equipment companies. Andy Bunting has signed up all the top players, except for Jonaton. Canada, it seems, is the wrong place to come from.
Well, Canada's not one of the major markets in the world. It's going to always be difficult for somebody based in Canada to justify any huge expense because of that.
The Times of London begs to differ. As Jonaton demolishes his early opponents, Colin McQuillan sees a bonanza if Jonaton Power becomes the first North American ever to win the World Championship.
I think it could revolutionize the game. We all know that the great engine of sports sponsorship and sports finance is North America. He could open a gusher for himself and really for the game.
With each win, the pressure doubles on Power.
I can't get the Canadian business to get behind this kid.
Back in Toronto, Trevor Marshall is seeking advice from an ad agency on how to package Power, along with motor oil, wine and ice cream, how to get Canadian business on board.
If this young man, Jonaton Power, becomes world champion, that's something to piggyback onto. That's a real starting point to make something big of it.
But he's getting fed up. The previous week, a bank had turned them down because they felt huge profits in the elitist game of squash didn't quite fit. Marshall has his eye on more receptive markets. He wants Jonaton to move to London.
The problem I've got is I'm heading off to the UK, and do I take him over there where he will get recognized very, very quickly and make him another pseudo-Englishman?
To England, eh?
What's the move to England?
The Prince man perks up.
I have to say that would be a very wise move. It would also make sponsorship for him, I suspect, also a lot easier.
But Jonaton's too much of a homeboy to leave Canada.
A whole bunch of these people wanted me to go over, pretend I'm English, and all that's wannabe stuff. But I always wanted to do it in Canada. I love being home, and it brings me a lot of joy to be here and sort of develop my game here, which everybody thought was impossible.
As Power storms into the final 8 in Malaysia, John Nimmick watches with interest. He's the most powerful American in squash. As president of the Players Association, he's sharply aware of the dollars that Power could generate if he wins here.
For our sport, he's probably the closest to somebody like Michael Jordan. Jonaton can be an incredibly successful spokesperson. Jonaton he's going to be a leader. He can lead, he can influence people. And once they see him play once, he's a star.
But Nimmick's hopes are dashed. There's no fairy tale ending.
First round! I couldn't, I fell!
In the quarterfinals, Jonaton blows up and loses. It's over. He doesn't even make it to the semi-finals. He's furious. Next day, life in the tropics goes on and Jonaton shrugs it off.
Oh, yeah, it's a bit of a setback, world champion, and obviously I'm going to be more marketable, but, you know, it'll come, it'll come.
And it comes back right away in Malaysia.
And now for the runner-up in the championship.
Within days, Jonaton leads Canada to the World Team Final for the first time ever. And the next week, in the biggest win of his career, he thrashes the world #1 in straight sets. Home 5 weeks later and $20,000 richer. There are more club exhibitions to help build his profile in the business community as he prepares for the biggest year of his career. In the UK, Trevor Marshall is lining up all those deals for Jonaton to sign if and when he does land the big one. For Venture, I'm Robin Benjer.